Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop, Friday, December 24th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Rose Bowl game against Utah in 8 days, the game against Michigan in 338 days. It is Christmas Eve, and Christmas, of course, a time of giving. And you, dear listeners, gave Tony Gerdeman and I more questions than we could possibly answer on Buckeye Weekly this week. So we're doing another listener questions episode of the Morning Scoop today. Tony is my guest this morning. Tony, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Tom. It's a wonderful time to be here. Thank you for inviting me once again.
So let's get right into this. First question from Hubert Spuckler, and I'm going to let you answer this one first because, man, I saw this and I was like, this is a great question that I have not thought about at all. I'm going to let you give an answer, and I'm going to think about whether I have a good one by the time you're done talking. Who surprised you the most as a Buckeye football player all time in terms of outplaying expectations?
I have an all-timer, and then I have a guy this year as well. I'll start with my all-timer, and it's Terry Glenn. And the reason for that is because he replaced Joey Galloway. Joey Galloway left early for the NFL after the 94 season, and Terry Glenn stepped in 95 and won the Biletnikoff. His 94 season, Terry Glenn was, he had like maybe 9 catches for like 113 yards. But the most amazing thing about what Terry Glenn did, other than being the best receiver in the nation, is that John Cooper said it was going to happen. Like, everybody is asking him, like, how are you guys going to replace Joey Galloway? And he just said, like, Terry Glenn, watch, you'll see. And he called it, and he was 100% right. Terry Glenn was dominant and unstoppable. Except for maybe except for maybe the Michigan game, you could say, but was amazing. Missed 2 games that season after bouncing off the turf at the Metrodome, but was still like 1,400 yards. That was a fun time to be an Ohio State student, because that was an incredible offense, the 95 offense. It was very pro football like, because you had Eddie George running the ball, you had Bobby Hoying throwing to Terry Glenn and Ricky Dudley, Buster Tillman, and Terry Glenn was had to walk on essentially because of grades.
Mm-hmm.
Then got a scholarship, but it was not an easy road for him, and it was just another one of these guys. Ohio State was littered with running backs and wide receivers who didn't play, because back then he just stuck around. There was no transfer portal. And then he plays a little bit in 94, and in 95 is just an amazing year and goes pro, and is, I think, the number 8 or 9 pick that year in the draft.
Yeah, he was his first 2 years, 8 catches, 156 yards, 0 touchdowns. 7 catches, 110 yards, 0 touchdowns. Third year, 64 catches, 1,411 yards, 17 touchdowns, 7th pick in the NFL draft. Off to go play for Bill Parcells, who definitely appreciated him as both a wide receiver and a human being. Who was your person for? Well, I'll tell you what. I was going to give you Terry Glenn is an outstanding answer for all the reasons you laid out. Like, he was a walk on, but not because of talent, because of off field stuff. There's another guy who was a walk on. Antonio Smith went from a walk on just because he was a walk on to an All-American as a cornerback. He was a good pick. Darren Lee was the other guy who I thought of, who was a high school quarterback out of New Albany. His mom worked with my wife, so he was just kind of like the kid who was at the station sometimes, the TV station, and turned into a high school quarterback. I was like, oh, good for him. He's a high school quarterback. Nice job. And then he kept trying to get an offer from Ohio State, and Luke Fickell very famously was banging on the table to give Darren Lee an offer. And then Darren Lee turns into a really fantastic linebacker at Ohio State, really a difference maker on that 2014 team, ends up a first round draft pick for the New York Jets. I mean, that is someone coming, not quite out of walk-on territory like Antonio Smith or Terry Glenn, but, coming, that was very much a project. I'm sure if you go back and look through 2011 Twitter, I'm sure there were some, why are you taking this kid? Why are you wasting a scholarship on this kid kind of takes out there. And then to turn into a first round pick, like that's pretty impressive. That is a pretty remarkable turnaround for him, because he, 2 seasons, he had 27 tackles for loss, 11 sacks between those 2 years. 20th pick overall in the 2016 draft. I mean, that's real impressive for someone to do that. So did you have, I'm going to guess, let me guess at your this year. Is it Denzel Burke? Because it feels like it should be Denzel Burke.
No, I'm going to say Chris Olave.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
yeah.
this is
All
a guy
right.
who,
yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
Ohio State just got to commit from some 3-star wide receiver out of California.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Olave?
Mm-hmm.
Is it Olave? Is that what it is? No, doesn't matter. He's never going to play. And then he's the all-time leader in touchdown receptions. I think Terry McLaurin is another good one,
Mm-hmm.
but not like when he committed. I think he was a 4-star guy. He was like the number one player in Indiana. You're like, oh, okay, this guy he can do a lot of different things, and he doesn't do anything for 2.5 years, almost 3 years, and like, well, they tried. You don't get them all. Like, I guess he's more James Clark than Michael Thomas or whatever. It's like, they go through these guys, and he'll be okay at Indiana or Indiana State. And then he turns into what he has become in the NFL, which is a Pro Bowl receiver and just a good human being, which he was beforehand. But that's another guy who certainly surprised me just by the way he just in his time at Ohio State was able to outplay maybe the expectations we had after seeing him not do anything for 2 years.
And, you mentioned Michael Thomas there. Michael Thomas is another good one. Where Michael Thomas came out of high school, was pretty unimpressive, went to Fork Union Military Academy, was, Bill Green, Buckeye Scoop's Bill Green talks about him at, one of those all-star games. And it was just kind of like, why is this guy here? And 2012, 3 catches, 22 yards. 2013, literally does not play because he's not good enough to play. Redshirt's his second year there. Third year, 54 catches, 799 yards, 9 touchdowns. Fourth year, 50 catches, 781 yards, 9 touchdowns, and off to the NFL, second round pick for the New Orleans Saints. I feel like I've heard something good about him playing in the NFL, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know if he panned out or not. Who's to say? Next one from @Ramy Mora. Question from a loyal and longtime listener to the Buckeye Weekly podcast, although hopefully also to the Morning Scoop. What's the reason for recruiting non-dual threat quarterbacks lately and focusing on the pocket passers instead? Is this by design?
I'll let you go on. Oh, okay, Tom. I guess I will go.
This is how this works. I host the show.
Yes, you're right.
I throw to you. Yes.
I know that you responded to this on Twitter. So yeah, that's a great question.
I did. I did answer this on Twitter, so that's fine. I will give my answer, and then Tony can steal it later. But yes, it is something of an intentional thing. It's not like if a guy runs a 4.4, they're going to be like, no, don't, please don't. But that's just not the primary thing they're looking for. They're not, this is not an Urban Meyer offense where they're planning on running the quarterback 20 times in a game. That's not really what they're doing. This is not, Braxton Miller is not really the platonic ideal for what Ryan Day wants in a quarterback. Ryan Day wants big, strong arm, accurate arm, good decision maker. Like that's what he wants. If that guy can also run a 4.4, great, fantastic. They would absolutely take him. But typically dual threat is kind of code for crappy passer. Like that's not always, but go back and treat yourself to some early Terrell Pryor games or early Braxton Miller games and marvel at the aerial assault that Ohio State is not putting up. Like the Ohio State offense in those years does not look like the Ohio State offense now. They want the guy who can throw the ball, get the ball out to all those playmakers. I mean, how many wide receivers did we just talk about? And the wide receiver room is still pretty stacked. They have all these playmakers. They want to distribute the ball to those playmakers. They don't need the quarterback to do all that stuff. And if the quarterback's running a bunch, the quarterback's probably getting hit a bunch and getting in, at risk of getting hurt. They want to kind of protect that quarterback. So that's kind of the reason. It's not that they are intentionally trying not to recruit guys who can run. It's just that's not anywhere near the top of the list in terms of priority right now.
Yeah, I would advise people to go back to the Michigan game in 2016 to see dual threat JT Barrett throwing the ball at a much lower level than what we have become accustomed to. And that was him almost at his pinnacle in 2016. And it comes back to the need to have a guy that can beat national championship teams, the guy who can beat them with his arm. If you can do it with your legs, that's fine. But like, I don't consider Justin Fields a dual threat quarterback, even though he is, because as you said, it's code, and there's no reason to codify what Justin Fields does because he can beat you with his arm. And but we've seen when you rely on the running quarterback, even when you rely on Justin Fields running, he can get banged up, which he did, and that hurt Ohio State in 2019. Knocked JT Barrett out of the game of his season in 2014. Braxton Miller knocked him out of the position in 2013. Like there's limitations to it, and really, it's also an equalizer, but you still have to be able to throw the ball. And if you can be the best of both worlds, then you're the perfect prospect. And that's rare. There aren't many unicorns out there. And so you go get the guy. Ryan Day likes to throw the ball. He believes in it. It works. It's easier than running the ball, I think we've seen, but that doesn't mean you can also give up on the run, as we've also seen. But when you've got these receivers, it's best to find a quarterback that can make the most of them.
All right, next one from @Matthew03187902. Does the small size of the 2022 class concern you, especially considering the number of guys in the portal?
Yeah, and it's interesting that Ohio State has 18 signees right now. Ryan Day said they'll get into the 20s. It didn't sound like they'd get into the high 20s or even the mid 20s. He just said 20s. But you look right now, Texas A&M has 27 signees or commits, Alabama 24, Georgia 26. Those are the top three classes. Ohio State at number 4, Texas at number 5 with 27, Penn State with 24. Even Notre Dame has 21 right now, Michigan with 23. So yeah, is it a concern? It's a concern if it could be a concern, and we know that they're going to sign a few more and a couple more defensive linemen perhaps. And the concern is that they didn't have more before now. I think like they've missed out on some guys, but I don't know how many they went in to sign because these numbers are so fluid. But because they are so fluid, Tom, I don't know if you go in trying to be under any number, even though you can go to the portal. I feel like right now you should try to be over on everything and then sort it out afterwards.
Well, I think for Ohio State, the portal is going to be a net negative in terms of numbers. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a net negative in terms of impact on the team, because you could, you would be happy to trade 3 guys who aren't playing for 1 guy for the next Justin Fields or the next Jonah Jackson or the next, whoever you want to bring in. But at the same time, in terms of calculating numbers and being at that 85 number at the start of fall camp, you kind of have to figure you're going to lose more than you pick up through the portal. That's just, that is life at the top of the heap. Alabama brings in a lot of transfers, but they lose more than they bring in. And that's going to be true of Alabama and Georgia and Oklahoma and all those other schools kind of at the top of the recruiting heap. I think you may be seeing a little bit of Clemson's small classes catching up with them right now, where they have, they've been even less aggressive in the portal than Ohio State has in terms of bringing guys in. They really have, as a decision, as an intentional thing, they have not been out portal shopping much at all right now. You just get the sense that's kind of changing. But Clemson was always the team that was, they would finish 9th in the country in the recruiting rankings because they were bringing in 17 kids while everyone else was bringing in 24. Eventually that does catch up. They had a lot of kids stay, and they would, they had a lot of consistency in their coaching staff and in their roster. But even now they're starting to see turnover as well. And then all of a sudden you're a little shorthanded. So, it's not a concern yet, the size of the 2022 class, because the class is not finished yet. And if they add another offensive lineman, you get the sense that there's probably a defensive lineman or 2 who's already signed and hasn't announced yet. And, you maybe add another one of those guys, another defensive lineman in the January and February kind of period, maybe add someone else, bring in a couple guys from the portal, and okay, it's fine. Because this has not been multiple years of this. If you're looking at 18 guys in December of 2022 and 18 guys in December of 2023, that's when it's really going to catch up with you, because you have to, this is, the old Jim Tressel, recruiting is like shaving. You have to do it every day or you look like crap. You have to bring in these classes every year. Otherwise it will start to catch up with you. You can't miss a class or 2. They have not missed this class yet, but they're not probably where they want to be either. And Ryan Day has said as much, and they're working to get back there. So not exactly a concern yet, but you can see it coming from here, I think. So that'll do it for today. We just wanted to hit a couple more questions. We have done a lot of listener question shows on the Buckeye Weekly feed this week, talking about everything from the Rose Bowl, the Jim Knowles defense and who that might benefit, talking about Nick Cage movies. Like you guys ask us, we answer. That's what we do. And so that you can find all of those on the Buckeye Weekly feed. I think we've done 5 or 6 shows, I think, of listener question shows on the Buckeye Weekly feed in the last week. And we'll probably have more coming out in the next couple days. So you make sure you check those out. You can find all of those shows and all of our great podcasts wherever you find this podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify. Just put in Buckeye Scoop, and you can subscribe right there and leave us a 5-star rating and review, which we do appreciate because it helps other folks find those shows as well. You can also find them on YouTube at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. You can, again, if you're watching there, hit that thumbs up. That will help other folks find that show. It works with the YouTube algorithm. I don't know, man. They just tell me hit the thumbs up and everyone finds the show. So if you can hit that thumbs up, we will really appreciate it. And also, if you are on YouTube, hit that bell also. That'll subscribe you to our channel. You get notified every time we post a new show, every time we do a new live show. Tony and I are getting on an airplane and headed to Los Angeles in the next couple days. We will be there for the Rose Bowl. We'll be there for all of the stuff before the Rose Bowl, interviews. We'll probably do some fun Scoop Eats kind of shows, all that good stuff. Plus, we'll try and do some live shows. We'll have a ton of content for you out at the Rose Bowl. It's all free. It's all at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. All you have to do is subscribe, and then you can be part of all that fun. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.